Evergreen, Colorado, quiet, beautiful, nestled in the Rockies, was the kind of place where neighbors waved from their porches, and the biggest news was often about the weather or the high school football team. Life here moved at a gentle pace, with pine trees swaying in the mountain breeze and families gathering for weekend barbecues. It was a town that felt safe, almost untouched by the chaos of the outside world. But all of that was shattered on September 10th, 2025, when a single morning changed everything. The familiar sounds of Evergreen High School's lunch period, laughter, chatter, the clatter of trays, were suddenly replaced by the deafening crack of gunfire echoing through the halls. In an instant, a place meant for learning and friendship became a scene of terror. A single student, armed and determined, turned a sanctuary into a battlefield, leaving classmates and teachers scrambling for cover. Chaos erupted, frantic 911 calls, terrified texts sent from under desks, parents racing to a school now surrounded by flashing lights and sirens. The sense of safety that had defined Evergreen was gone in a heartbeat. The shooter, 16-year-old Desmond Hawley, moved through the halls with chilling purpose, firing multiple rounds and reloading as students and staff desperately tried to find safety. The fear was palpable, the confusion overwhelming. 2 students were critically wounded and rushed to St. Anthony Hospital, their fates uncertain as the community held its breath, praying for a miracle. The hours that followed felt endless, as families waited for news no one ever wants to hear. The school, once a symbol of promise and hope, was now a crime scene, cordoned off with yellow tape and crawling with investigators searching for answers. A heavy silence fell over Evergreen, broken only by the wail of sirens and the thrum of news helicopters circling overhead. The world was watching, but for those here, time seemed to stand still. The question echoed through the streets and homes. Why here? How could this happen in Evergreen? The disbelief was matched only by the grief and fear that settled over the town. This was more than a local tragedy. It was another chapter in a national story of violence and loss, a story that had played out in too many towns before, and now, heartbreakingly, in Evergreen. Evergreen was forced to confront the same dark questions haunting communities across America. Questions about safety, about why, and about how to heal when the silence is finally broken. The attack began without warning at 12:30 p.m., shattering the ordinary calm of a spring afternoon. What started as just another school day would soon become a nightmare that no one could have anticipated. It happened during the busiest time of the school day, when the halls and cafeteria were packed with students laughing, eating, and catching up with friends. The air was filled with the usual lunchtime chatter, completely unaware of the horror about to unfold. Desmond Hawley, a senior at Evergreen High, started shooting as students moved between the cafeteria and outdoor areas. The chaos erupted in seconds, with the sound of gunfire echoing through the corridors and across the open spaces. At first, some mistook the gunfire for a prank or a senior stunt, until panic swept the campus. Screams and shouts replaced laughter as students realized the danger was real. Students scattered in every direction or barricaded themselves in classrooms, following lockdown procedures they'd hoped never to use. Teachers rushed to lock doors and turn off lights, trying to keep everyone safe as fear gripped the building. Law enforcement from multiple agencies rushed to the scene, sirens blaring as they arrived within minutes. Officers and SWAT teams entered the building, unsure if the shooter was still active or if more violence was to come. Hawley moved deliberately through the halls, firing inside classrooms and behind the school, reloading multiple times. His actions left a trail of fear and confusion, as students and staff desperately tried to stay out of harm's way. 2 students were hit in the chaos. 18-year-old Matthew Silverstone was critically injured, while another suffered less severe wounds. Paramedics rushed in, working frantically to save lives as the situation unfolded. The attack ended abruptly when Hawley turned the gun on himself. He was taken into custody by police, but despite their efforts, he died later that night at the hospital. Police quickly secured the campus, leading students out with their hands up, one by one. Outside, anxious parents waited desperately for news, and emotional reunions unfolded as families were finally brought back together. The terror lasted only minutes, but its impact would last far longer. The once busy hallways now stood empty, echoing with the memories of what had happened. The school community was left traumatized, struggling to process the tragedy. Vigils and memorials began to appear, as students and staff leaned on each other for support and comfort, the healing just beginning. The timeline of terror was over, but the questions had only started. Reporters gathered outside and community meetings were held as everyone searched for answers and tried to make sense of the senseless. Evergreen would never be the same. The scars of that day would linger, a reminder of how quickly everything can change, and how a community must come together to heal. Who was Desmond Hawley? To most, he was a quiet, unremarkable junior, just another face in the crowd. No major disciplinary issues, no obvious red flags. But in the months before the attack, he grew increasingly withdrawn and isolated. Investigators found a troubled digital life. Hawley had retreated into online forums known for extremist ideologies. There, he found a sense of belonging that twisted his worldview toward violence. His family, devastated and searching for answers, is left with unimaginable grief and guilt. Hawley's story is a tragic reminder. Sometimes the quietest students are those most in need of help. Investigators believe Desmond Hawley was radicalized online, a process that began with loneliness and ended in violence. He wasn't settling a personal score. His attack was both random and targeted, fueled by extremist ideology. Online communities offered him validation, feeding his resentment and anger. Algorithms pushed him deeper into echo chambers, normalizing hate and nihilism. Authorities are combing through his digital footprint, searching for the forums, manifestos, and contacts that shaped his path. Hawley's motive was a toxic mix of personal grievance and ideological poison. His actions were a desperate attempt to feel significant in a world where he felt invisible. The tragedy at Evergreen is a stark warning about the dangers of online radicalization. Amidst the chaos, stories of courage emerged. Teachers and staff sprang into action, locking doors, barricading classrooms, and guiding students to safety. Their calm and quick thinking saved lives, turning lockdown drills into a life-saving script. Students followed instructions, comforting each other and relaying information to law enforcement. Older students helped younger ones, bonds of community shining through the fear. Law enforcement praised the school's response, noting that the shooter's plans for greater harm were thwarted by locked doors and barricades. In the darkest moments, the everyday heroes of Evergreen High stood strong. Their bravery prevented a much greater tragedy. The community's resilience was tested and proved unbreakable. The shooting sent shockwaves through Evergreen, shattering its sense of safety. The high school became a somber monument, surrounded by police tape and news vans. Students and families faced trauma that would linger for years. Yet, the community rallied. Vigils were held, counseling centers opened, and local businesses supported first responders. The pain was deep, but so was the solidarity. A makeshift memorial grew outside the school, messages of Evergreen Strong declaring unity. The tragedy broke their sense of security, but not their spirit. Healing began with small acts of kindness and collective grief. Evergreen vowed to heal together, refusing to be defined by violence. With the immediate threat over, investigators began piecing together what happened and why. Search warrants targeted Hawley's locker, home, and digital devices, seeking evidence of planning and motive. His family cooperated fully, themselves victims of unimaginable loss. Forensic analysts worked to unlock his phone and computer, searching for manifestos, communications, and the online influences that radicalized him. Investigators also focused on how Hawley obtained the firearm, a key question for both justice and policy. Each detail uncovered brought the community closer to understanding and closure. The investigation's findings would shape the conversation on prevention and accountability. The Evergreen shooting reverberated across a nation already reeling from violence. It occurred the same day conservative activist Charlie Kirk was assassinated, intensifying the national debate on guns. Gun safety groups renewed calls for reform, while politicians offered condolences and reignited familiar arguments. The tragedy became another data point in America's ongoing crisis of gun violence. For parents and students, it was a chilling reminder that no community is immune. The cycle of school shootings has left scars on the national psyche. Evergreen's pain was shared by a country weary of tragedy. The epidemic of gun violence raged on, leaving shattered communities in its wake. The police tape will eventually come down and the flashing lights will fade from Evergreen's streets, but the scars left behind, etched into the walls, the memories, and the hearts of everyone here will remain long after the news crews leave. The echoes of that day will linger in every hallway, every classroom, and every quiet moment. Students and staff will return to their routines, but the sense of normalcy they once knew is forever changed. The laughter in the halls is quieter, the glances more cautious. For many, the simple act of coming to school now carries a weight it never did before. The trauma, both visible and invisible, will linger, shaping lives for years to come. Some wounds are easy to see, but others are hidden, surfacing in nightmares, anxiety, or sudden tears. The journey to healing is long and uncertain. Healing requires more than a few days of counseling or a single assembly. It demands ongoing support, open conversations, and a community willing to listen and help, even when the headlines have faded. The tragedy forces us to confront difficult questions. How do we prevent this from happening again? What changes must we make to keep our children safe? And how do we come together as a community to find real solutions? How do we reach out to those who feel isolated or invisible? How do we ensure that no one slips through the cracks and that every student feels seen, heard, and valued? The investigation into Holly's radicalization and access to weapons will spark urgent debates about digital literacy, mental health, and gun safety. These conversations are not easy, but they are necessary if we hope to prevent future tragedies. Evergreen's loss is profound. The innocence, the sense of security, and the lives that were forever altered cannot be replaced. The pain is raw, and the grief is shared by all. But these scars are also a call to action, a plea to address the root causes of violence, to build a safer, more compassionate world for everyone. The community's pain is both a warning and a hope, a warning that no town is immune, and a hope that, through unity and determination, no other community will have to endure what Evergreen has faced. The story may end here, but the work to heal, to support one another, and to prevent future tragedies is just beginning. Evergreen's journey continues, and so does the call for change.